Imagine you're on top of the world as a badass MMA fighter, undefeated in every fight that you step in. People everywhere worship the ground you walk on, calling you the strongest human alive at just 27 years old. Appears out of blue and gives you a smooth kiss, sending you directly to afterlife. However, that's not even the craziest part, as next you wake up in a same body but in a whole new realm where you're stripped of your glory and forced to work as a slave every day, or else you ended up dead by goblins. The story is about a 27-year-old virgin boy named Choi Hyun-seok, who couldn't help but cry over how easily he died just when he was finally about to enjoy life. The worst part? He had never dated a girl in his entire life, and now he wouldn't get the chance to ever. However, it only took him half an hour to realize that maybe being dead wasn't so bad after all, as he had no family, no friends, no one who cared about him. On top of that, he no longer had to deal with daily exhausting training. Just as he was wallowing in those thoughts, the space in front of him started glowing, catching his attention. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the light, and then a cute angel appeared. She called him by some fancy name, SSS rank hero, and apologized for being late. She introduced herself as Rachel, a headhunter who scouts people whose lives ended on Earth. Choi Hyun-seok was completely captivated by her breathtaking beauty and couldn't focus on anything she was saying. Then, out of nowhere, the angel grabbed his hand and told him she was giving him two options. The first one was to accept his fate and wait to be reincarnated into his next life as a pitiful old bachelor. The second option? To be resurrected in another world as a famous hero that every girl dreams of spending a night with him. However, the boy didn't rush to choose between two options. Instead, he awkwardly asked Rachel if she could give him a little more time to think it through. The angel stepped closer and tried to convince Choi Hyun-seok that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, offering everything a man could ever dream of. She told him he shouldn't let it slip away so easily. But the thought of having to fight again this time, not just as a fighter but as a hero, was the reason that making him to hesitate, as all he really wanted was a peaceful life, something he had always longed for. Rachel, however, wasn't the type to give up so easily, and for some unknown reason was consisting the boy to accept her gentle offer without delay. Determined, she tried to explain things differently to help him lean toward choosing the life of a hero. This time, she used a doll to act out a scenario. As soon as Choi reincarnated as a hero, he would meet a village chief who would assign him simple, easy quests, not anything difficult or dangerous. And once he completed the tasks, the chief would reward him with his only daughter, who also happened to be the most beautiful girl on the entire continent. Even after seeing this little demonstration, though, the boy looked even more confused. He didn't seem any closer to making a decision and showed no signs of leaning toward the hero life. Seeing Choi's expression, Rachel quickly realized her first plan had completely failed. Without missing a beat, she moved on to her backup plan. Suddenly, the angel turned around and started to walk away, making it clear she was disappointed in the boy. She wished him good luck living as a pitiful old bachelor and casually reminded him that there was no guarantee he'd even reincarnate as a human in his next life. Her plan worked perfectly after all. The last thing Choi Hyun-seok wanted was to come back as some ugly bachelor animal in his next life. Panicking, he jumped into action, grabbed Rachel's feet, and started begging, saying he'd do whatever she wanted. At first, the angel pretended not to hear him, asking him to repeat what he just said. This time, Choi, still clinging tightly to her feet, shouted at the top of his lungs that he'd become the hero. A satisfied smile spread across Rachel's face as her second plan had worked like a charm. Without wasting any time, Angel Rachel got straight to work, preparing to send the boy to his new life, something he wasn't expecting to happen so quickly. As a glowing teleportation circle appeared beneath him, Rachel cheerfully announced that there was no point in wasting time here when a wonderful new world was waiting for him. The thought of being sent to another world without any proper preparation was terrifying for him. But his complaints fell on deaf ears as the angel sent him off without giving him a chance to voice his concerns. Once her job was done, Rachel's mood completely shifted. She was all smiles, feeling relieved after spending so much of her time convincing Choi Hyun-seok to do what she wanted. But just as she was about to relax, she got a call from someone. She quickly reported that Choi Hyun-seok's transmigration was successfully completed as promised, and then casually asked for her commission as per their deal. Moments later, the protagonist found himself lying on a wooden bed, half asleep and hearing or maybe dreaming about someone trying to wake him up. He figured it must be the village chief that Rachel had mentioned, here to give him the easy tasks she described. Feeling confident about what was coming, Choi Hyun-seok thought it would be a piece of cake to handle. However, his peaceful moment was brutally interrupted when a heavy blow struck his stomach. He shot up from the bed in an irritated mood, ready to confront whoever dared to wake him up in such a manner. But the sight that greeted him left him completely stunned. A massive orc stood in front of him, wearing a bull's skull on its head, shouting furiously about how he dared to sleep in the slave dormitory at this hour of the day. For a moment, the protagonist thought this must really be the village chief, the one who was supposed to offer him his daughter after completing simple quests. So, he respectfully sat on the bed and introduced himself as the hero without mentioning his real name. The orc stepped closer, looked him up and down, and then, to Choi's surprise, muttered, "Are heroes these days really this stupid?" Choi Hyun-seok blinked in confusion, wondering if he'd somehow done something wrong. This guy didn't seem like the kind and welcoming village chief Rachel had described. Still, he convinced himself that a sweet and beautiful angel like Rachel wouldn't lie to him for no reason. He realized this must be some kind of test, a challenge or maybe a tutorial quest to kickstart his journey in this new world. But the aura radiating from the bull-headed orc sent chills down his spine. It was overwhelming, and for a moment, he hesitated. Still, as a former professional Korean fighter, Choi decided he couldn't back down now. Fear or not, he had to face this head-on. All of a sudden, he sprang into action, aiming a kick straight for the orc's weak spot. Confident he could take out this flimsy tutorial monster with nothing but a swift kick, he gave it his all. His foot struck its target dead on, but to his shock, the blow barely fazed the red orc. The creature didn't even stumble, it just stood there, looking more annoyed than anything else. The situation took a turn when the monster grabbed the boy's leg mid-air, mocking him, questioning how a so-called hero could be such a weakling. The creature started squeezing the boy's leg angrily, muttering to himself about how tired he was of dealing with foolish humans like this. The boy immediately felt sharp pain in his leg, but things went from bad to worse when the cow-headed orc prepared to strike back, snarling about teaching the self-proclaimed hero a lesson. Choi could sense the danger, but he was in no condition to dodge or block the attack. Hours later, Choi Hanseok woke up in an underground prison, thrashing around and shouting for a rematch with the cow-headed orc. His desperate cries echoed through the cell until the door suddenly creaked open. This time, a goblin entered, carrying a massive blood-stained sword on his shoulder. The goblin glared at him and growled, "Why have you been such a pain in the ass lately?" The sight of the goblin and his sword scared the life out of Choi, who instantly promised to stay quiet from now on. Before leaving, the goblin warned him, "If you pull something like this again, I'll turn you into meat soup," leaving the terrified boy alone with his thoughts. Once again, the boy found himself drowning in thoughts about how he ended up here, feeling nothing like the hero the angel had claimed he would be. The fact that he might die again as a virgin was only making his mood worse. Suddenly, a voice from a small window called out to him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Choi Hae-seok couldn't help but wonder who was on the other side. The voice introduced himself as a senior who was about to become a hero soon. The guy went on to reveal that they were being held in the Demon King's army fortress, a place where humans were enslaved. Recognizing the man's accent, Choi immediately realized he was Korean and eagerly asked if he knew why they had been imprisoned there. Seeing how curious the boy was, the man started shouting loudly, "Hey, self-proclaimed heroes, are you still alive? The real hero who's come to save us is finally here." It turned out the two of them weren't the only ones locked in that prison, as others began shouting for help too, each one claiming to be a hero. This only made Choi feel even more confused. Sensing this, the man decided to explain everything he knew to the bewildered newcomer. According to the guy, the one in charge of this place is the orc with a bull skull on his head, known as Riedrun. The goblins, like the one Choi Hanseok encountered earlier, are the prison guards here. But what he said next about Rachel completely shocked Choi. He claimed that all of them ended up here because of her. Calling her a wicked demon, the guy doubted whether she had sent them here on purpose or if it was some kind of mistake. Hearing this, Choi couldn't help but ponder if he wasn't supposed to be there. He decided to double-check if the guy's information was legit. The man confidently reassured him, saying he had pieced everything together from the other so-called heroes locked up in different areas of the fortress. According to his findings, heroes usually start their journey in the middle of bustling cities or quiet rural villages. That's how it's supposed to happen, but in their case, it seemed Angel Rachel had tricked them and sent them to the wrong place entirely. In just a few seconds, it all started to sink in. Choi was convinced he was about to live a miserable, harsh life in this place, all because he fell for that cute angel's sweet words. Worse yet, he was probably going to die as a virgin again. Hours later, the scene shifted to another part of the fortress where goblin soldiers were guarding a group of slaves hard at work. Among them was Choi Hae-seok, who was being forced to carry a massive tree trunk on his shoulder while begrudgingly singing the work song, "Let's crush the humans. Let's devour the humans." Every word of that song made his blood boil. Just then, the goblin on top of Tree loudly announced that their work for the day was done, and they were dismissed for today. Barely containing his anger, Choi clenched his fists and silently promised himself, "One day, I'll tear that goblin limb from limb." Exhausted and seething, he returned to his cell and lay down, trying to catch his breath. As he stared at the cold, damp walls of the prison, he couldn't help but think, honestly, staying in this freezing cell is way better than working in that godforsaken yard as a slave. Suddenly, a memory of Rachel flashed in his mind. He recalled the moment she mentioned that, as a hero in another world, he would be able to see his status in a specific window. At first, Choi scoffed at the idea, thinking it was probably just another one of her lies. But after some thought, he decided to give it a try. Gathering his courage, he uttered the words, "status window," feeling a little ridiculous. To his shock, something actually happened. In an instant, a glowing window appeared in front of him, displaying his abilities, strength, and a host of other information. Seeing a system window like this for the first time, the boy couldn't help but wonder what all these numbers meant. Muttering to himself about having 31 stamina, he was suddenly interrupted by the other guy shouting in disbelief, "Wait, you already have stamina." It was then that Choi realized the other guy had been spying on him. The Korean man couldn't believe someone could have 31 stamina right at level 1, but when he learned that Choi was a champion in his past life, it started to make more sense. However, Choi showed zero interest in discussing his stats any further. "Doesn't matter how strong I am," he said flatly. "As long as I'm still a slave, it's useless." With that, he laid down on the cold floor and covered his ears, trying to block out the other guy's overly enthusiastic words of encouragement. The protagonist wasn't in the mood to get friendly or make small talk. For now, he just wanted to be left alone, or at least pretending like that. Time flew by, and it was about the middle of the night when the boy returned to check his status again, hoping there were no intruders. This time, two things caught his eyes. First was mana, which he believed could be used later for superhuman abilities, and hero points. However, he had no idea what the hero points were all about. Despite his curiosity, he tried to ask other proclaimed heroes about it, but none of them had any clue. Suddenly, the space in front of him began to glow once more, just like the day he died. And then out of thin air, someone jumped out, someone with huge melons that distracted the boy. Surprisingly, it was Rachel who appeared, asking the boy to let her explain what hero points were all about. However, something about her was different from the previous version of herself. This time, Rachel looked much smaller and her angelic wings were gone. Without waiting for the boy's response, she started explaining the concept of hero points and how heroes could earn them by completing quests and then use them to gain or improve their abilities. But before Rachel could finish her explanation, the boy suddenly grabbed her tightly, like catching a sparrow. With a terrifying expression, Choi Han-seok declared that he doesn't care about hero points as long as Rachel was in his grasp. After everything he had endured in this harsh life because of her, he just wanted to make her pay for his own satisfaction. Minutes later, after giving her a rough punishment, he tied Rachel to the tip of what looked like a fishing hook, and then he demanded Rachel to confess why she had sent him to this strange place instead of the village he was supposed to arrive at. It didn't take long for her to spill the truth. She explained with a sad and apologetic look that it wasn't intentional. She hadn't meant to trick him or anyone else. She had made a mistake because of an unknown error in her teleportation skill, something she hadn't been aware of. Looking genuinely regretful, Rachel admitted that she was here now to serve him as her punishment. She promised to be his personal fairy, staying by his side until the day he defeated the Demon King. She said this was her way of making amends, believing he was a skilled warrior who could accomplish the mission. However, the protagonist showed no interest in taking Rachel as her personal fairy, or even accepting her words about being a hero or defeating the Demon Lord. He left Rachel stunned as he turned his back on her and announced that all he wanted was to live a normal life, with no intention of fighting anyone. His reason to ignore Rachel and everything she was trying to explain was quite simple, partly because he didn't trust her and partly because he was still angry at her. Rachel was left speechless as she watched Choi Han-seok completely dismiss her and go straight to bed. But then she remembered who she's trying to make a proper conversation. The same clueless guy who only knew how to fight and dreamed of nothing except having a harem of curvy women. Realizing her situation, the fairy started to panic, wondering what would happen to her if he refused to live the life of a warrior. But then, memories of the day she was demoted from a high-ranking angel to a personal fairy flashed through her mind.